this is the last one. You guys have not had a lot of questions, so we are flowing through this quite nicely. Nice. Okay. Super happy with this one. And the reason I picked this one is the last live we did with editing wise, a lot of people asked about how did I light this one. So now you can see how I lit this one. Got video footage that I used and I took a screenshot of it. So now you can see how this image was lit. Which is kind of interesting, eh? When you look at the video or the screenshot, it looks very bright. Obviously wasn't exposed for that moment. And she's also wearing a shoe. All right. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was correct. 5 lights. Yep. It's much brighter because obviously I was working on taking a photo and the video was just kind of just to roll some behind the scenes. But honestly, that's normally how an image looks. When you're looking at it from the natural eye, this was exposed for the room. So when you're looking at it from the natural eye, it's very bright, you know. We don't always see that because we use flash often. And when we use flash, it's a very short burst and nobody notices. So, camera settings. Remember I told you guys I was going to talk about apertures not being as low as they normally have to be? This is one of those points. This aperture is at f4. Because I obviously wanted more of her in focus. I see Rand's typing. Let's have a look what he has to ask. I love questions. Really, I do. Love the mood you create. Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about the motivation because that's what the mood is, the motivation. So, let's talk about some of the motivation. The idea behind this is called 1950s Hollywood glam. Now, this is kind of where I fell in love with the Fresnel. And why I actually use it so often. It's from the 1950s. In the 1950s, if you look back at photography back then, there were no modifiers or lights back then, right? And I have spoken about this on a past live. And when you look at how they had to kind of adapt back in the day with lighting and stuff like that, the Fresnel was the only choice they had if they wanted to use, some artificial lighting that's not, natural light. Even painters back in the day used to put their canvases close to a window, and they used, obviously the natural light coming in from the window to paint the people. So when photographers started using, artificial lighting, they didn't have a lot of choices. The options were very, very slim. And the only light that was available was stage lights. And stage lights used Fresnels, or they used bare bulbs. And the Fresnel actually comes from a lighthouse, which, is one of my all-time fun facts, and I'm sure there's a lot of laughter happening at right now. But yeah, it comes from the lighthouse. It is designed to beam a light through fog. And they noticed, well, it's also great for lighting a stage, making sure that the main person on stage is, being isolated. So the main way to get that old Hollywood look was to use a Fresnel. I heard. Cool. Thought it was a message. All right. Okay. The main way to get the old Hollywood look was by using a Fresnel in the image. And the reason for that is you get this, similar to what I showed earlier, this beautiful ball of light on the face, which is also I can't zoom in, but if you want to look at the image more, close up and stuff like that, it is also on my social media. And it creates very harsh shadows because it's very much a focused beam of light. There's no softening happening from it. It's focusing a beam of light and then it's creating this softening effect out to the ridges. But the main light is hard. So that is our key light. Skip through a lot of things, but that is the key light. So the whole idea behind the shoot was recreating an old Hollywood glamour photo shoot. And a lot of choices in this image, reflected that. The background color. Background color was picked specifically for this because when they were shooting, they often used, there were wooden floors, wooden stuff around. It was a very warm aesthetic. And also, like, if it was in color at all, most of the time it was black and white. But I wanted a warmer aesthetic because, if you look at like really old Hollywood images, they've got like a nice warm aesthetic to it. They often use like a golden background, for the Golden Globes and stuff like that. They often used like yellows and reds and stuff like that. So I chose this brown background. And then also we chose 3 dresses. Now that is one of my all-time list of things to do when you're doing photo shoots is make sure that your model at least packs 3 different outfits. So when you're taking photos, they don't look like they're all taken from the same day. But the model's outfits I chose were very neutral in color. We had a green, a beige, and the red. Those were 3 choices. This was the red. It was obviously my favorite, or the images that I got from it was my favorite. But the choices were also very neutral in the sense wasn't, looked like normal streetwear you see today. We made sure that it fitted the aesthetic. That is the mood. And the camera settings, obviously, as well, play in with the mood. Now, we were using an f4 specifically because lenses back then weren't as low. Well, there were a few, but it was very rare. But I also I didn't want that shallow depth of field. Why did I need it? If I wanted to make sure the model was sharply in focus, I didn't want that shallow depth of field because we're shooting in studio. What does it matter? I show the background. The background is either I'm controlling that with light or it is a plain backdrop. So why worry about having f1.2? I was shooting with the 70-200 and that thing has a f2.8. Didn't need it. And most often when it comes to lenses, you'll find that lenses actually have a sweet spot of sharpness. When you go too low, yeah, it's got sharpness, but it isn't as sharp as you would find it on a higher f-stop, which logically makes sense, but in the way the manufacturing works is where it's supposed to be sharp, it isn't as sharp as it would have been at a higher f-stop, even if you looked at the shallow depth of field. And the same if you go up to a higher f-stop. If you let's say, go to f2.2, you'll see vignetting, chromatic aberrations, and still focal fall off around the corners. There's a sweet spot in most lenses, and most often you will find them around f5.6, f4 to up till I would say f11. Those would be your sweet spot of where your lens is actually working at its full capability of sharpness and focusing. So, not really the point here, but that is why I here like to use the aperture f4. I didn't need the background to be shallow. I just wanted to make sure she was properly in focus and there was no heavy focal fall off happening to the back of her on her shoulders or to the hair. Shutter speed was just to balance out, all the different lighting aesthetics, which we'll speak about when we talk about the lights. And the ISO, same. Because we're using a lot of lights, we could go down to 400. And because we didn't care about ambient contamination at 400th of a second, we could have had that ISO down even lower if we lowered our shutter speed, but we didn't want some ambient contamination this time. We didn't want the light to wrap around the model. Or, the light that's, if you're not familiar, the light that's maybe spilling over to the ceiling hitting the model. All those things you keep in account. Okay. So we are going to work with the way I normally say is a great way to actually work in an image. We're going to work from the back to the front on this one. And the reason I'm saying that is because I put a lot of brain power into this image. So we're going to work from the background. Background is what we call a hybrid Fresnel. I don't have an image of that thing because they're fairly new and they're fairly newly designed. I think they're about 2 years old. And the reason we say we work with the background is we work with the areas of light that we can step up. So we're going to work with the background because then when we start adding the other lights, we'll notice if the background gets affected and the model gets affected. So if the model's not being affected by the background light, perfect. If the background gets affected by the model light, we'll manage that. So background light. The background light is, switch all of this stuff off. The background light is, surprise, surprise this time, the CL10. It's not my main light. Even though I love it, but it's not my main light. I'm using that just as a continuous one, hitting the background to create that ball of light glow that you see that's just around her hips. And I'm just controlling that. And none of it is spilling over to the front. Next up, how I would work it is the rim light, which are these tube lights. And they were very important to me, and they were also set, even though you can't tell because obviously when a light is that bright, it's whited out, but they are set to a Kelvin that is much warmer, which if I remember correctly, at about 4,800 Kelvin, around about 4,200 or 4,800 Kelvin. I made it warmer because back then, when we were shooting, the Hollywood glam looks, you wouldn't often find, these beautiful, neutral white, daylight lights out there that are like 5,600 Kelvin. So, but as well, I wanted a warmer aesthetic in the photo. And if I can manage the photo without having to do a lot of Photoshop, if I can do that, I've got the tools at my disposal, I'm going to use it. It's always great to have a fantastic base and then, improve it in Photoshop and not have to take an okay image and make it great. Take a great image and make it fantastic. So the rim lights are 4,200 to 4,800 Kelvin. And it's creating that beautiful glow that you're seeing on her shoulders. And because we can draw, I'll add that in. Still going to use red. And you'll see them over here. You'll see it kind of hitting the hair. And because we were using the Fresnel, the ball of light, it's not affecting her hair a lot. So we're getting even nicer rim light hitting her hair. So it's even creating that, because you're getting that, what I would say is a bit of a fall off, or the feathering out of the ball of light. It's still creating some shape, but now with the rim light also hitting it from the back, you're even getting some more shape, and it's kind of like bleeding over towards the front. So we'll switch this off because you could probably not tell with all that drawing. You'll see there's still detail in the shadows, but it's not overpowering. She's really nicely isolated from the background, that darkness there. So yeah, that is the rim light. Next up, I would use the key light because, I didn't know at this point in time that it would have been too dark, which is that one. And that one, this time, because we're talking about a different one, it's still a stellar, but it is this one, which is called the Reflex. Now, what's awesome about this one is it's both a flash and a continuous light. So what's nice about this, because it's such a powerful flash and such a powerful continuous light, I can keep the modeling light on. And I can see where the light's hitting. So I can make sure that when she's moving, because we're focusing the light in such a small column, in such a small ball, I can move the light around to hit her face so that it's not, when she moves out, that her face is not in shadow, because I wanted that, Rembrandt lighting that you see on her cheek over there. I wanted to make sure that the light is hitting the face, but not flattening the face. I see some people are typing, so we're not gonna. We'll give them a moment. I have to jump off. Thanks for the show. Cool. No worries. Yes, Kim, that is the one we spoke of the other day. And Zaid, thanks for making it. It was awesome having you here. Yeah, we spoke about this light the other day. It is, both the flash and the continuous light. It's quite nice, and it puts out the same amount of power as the 8200. So it's not heavy at all. It fits quite like comfortably in the hand, to be quite honest. It's literally, if you look probably at my video, most difficult, it's, I would say, about this big. It's very nice. It's very small. You can even see it in the demo photo at the top there. It's very, very tiny. The modifier is bigger than the actual light. So yeah. But that is the full light. And what I liked about it in this photo, I was still using the flash, but I used the continuous light to maneuver it. And the reason I was using mixed lighting is mainly I wanted more power output from it, because I'm using the CL10 in the background. I wanted more power from the reflex. It's not as powerful as the CL10. Its flash is more powerful, and we're even using it in high-speed sync. It's even more powerful than what you would do if you were shooting below 250th a second, or whatever your flashing speed is. Cool. That is the main light. And we were obviously, like I said, using the Fresnel, which I explained earlier. It is the same light, and this time we were focusing the beam more out, so we were getting less feather. So as you can see, there's kind of like a screw path towards the back, and you can kind of feather it in and out by using, screwing it further closer to the light or further away. We were obviously more further out to make sure the light's a lot more focused and just kind of hitting the chest. Then I realized, well, she's sitting in this very nice, fashion, and the original image was very dark below. You didn't see her legs well enough, and you also didn't see a lot of the dress. You literally just saw the face and the highlights, and the room light hitting the head. So I was like, and the glow in the background. I thought to myself, well, you're not seeing what the glow is kind of like supposed to be separating. It's just this dark figure. So we added the full light, which is the green arrow you see over there. So, and as you can see, also the full light, the other one I showed you earlier, the full light was kind of horizontal, because I don't want as much full. But I used the full light in this method in a more upright column style effort, because I wanted it to go closer, but not all the way to the top, closer to her face, but also go down the leg. If it was in a horizontal way, you wouldn't have gotten the same effect. It would have lit up the leg. And also, if it was horizontal, the light would have bled over. As you can see, there's a lot more shadow still in the back, in the front of the leg here. Where is the drawing? Let me switch that on. As you can see, there's still a lot more shadow over here. There you go. And if I had the light, bring on the camera settings again. If I put the light in a horizontal way, obviously the shadow would be less, because it would have been a larger light surface in that manner. So that is the setup. 5 lights. Yeah, 5 lights to get this image. Any questions? This was the final image. Any questions about this image? Any questions about any of the stuff? You want me to go back to some of the previous ones? Any thoughts? If you want to ask about camera equipment, if you want to ask about lighting equipment, go ahead. Now is your time. Cool. Everybody happy. Okay, cat's typing. Jesh, you good? I know Dave can't talk. Bryant, you good? Kim, we good? Any questions? There's more of them. It's no bad questions here. Either that or I explain really good. Cool. All good. Everybody, could you use, I've used the booty dish instead of the Fresnel to achieve a similar look. Okay. A smaller beauty dish, possibly with a honeycomb grid, but you won't get a exactly the same look because the way a beauty dish is designed, specifically, it has the reflector dish in the center. And the reason for that is when the light hits into the beauty dish, and then it will reflect out onto the rest of the beauty dish and then spill all over the show and then spread out. And the design behind the beauty dish is to soften that focused ball of light, which you would get a similar look, and a beauty dish was often used in this similar lighting style, but you won't get it exactly the same because the iconic hotspot, as you would call it, won't be there. And that is the same thing with when I was speaking about the baffler that you get in a softbox. It often has a thicker centerpiece, and that is to lessen a hotspot coming in from a flash. Because if you look at how lights work, is they've got a very focused beam of light that is projecting out. And that's why we use a diffuser, is to diffuse that. And most often, if you got a lower grade modifier, they don't have that central baffler with the central thicker piece that is just controlling the excess central amount of light, because the rest is getting reflected. So you could get a similar look, but it won't be exactly the same because you don't have that hotspot, which you can see here on her cheek. There's a part of her face that has got a lot more light. Hope that answered the question. No, Godox actually makes the Fresnel. If there's the question is there a Godox attachment that can create a similar look? So I have a video on my Instagram if you want to check it out, where I actually run down 3 different modifiers to get these to get the Hollywood glam look. It's a little short video. It's also on my YouTube channel. Godox has they recently came out with their own Fresnel that you can buy camera stuff. I do recommend, in a certain way, to just check out the different Fresnels that there are. Not all Fresnels that are being sold are the same. Maybe just do some reading. But I have seen the Godox ones. They've got 2 different ones. They've got a large one and they've got a smaller one. And then the big difference is obviously the size of the light that you can use it with and the size of the ball of light. I personally would prefer the smaller one because, most often as photographers, we are not too worried about the overall, how can I say, look of the image, because we can Photoshop stands and stuff like that out if we need to. The bigger one is mainly for video lights when you actually have to get the light away further from the model. So obviously distance would affect the amount of spread. So Godox has 2 options. You can also achieve a very similar look with the projection attachment that I was talking about earlier, which is, let's see, I think it's that one. No, not that one. That one. This one. Again, cost-wise, I wouldn't say this is the most effective. The Fresnel is cheaper, but you can get a very similar look with the projection attachment because it works in a very similar way. It is about focusing a light. Now, something that I didn't explain in the previous one, and we'll jump quickly back to that one. We'll talk. There. Let's see. Jump back to that one. Switch these out. I think it's what's the name? 07, yeah. That one. Go. Okay. With the projection attachment, let me switch on that layer. With the projection attachment, that one, you can focus the harshness of the shadow, or not the harshness, the sharpness of the shadow with the projection attachment. So it works very similar in the Fresnel, and then with the way I was saying that when you zoom it in and out, you control the amount of softness of the spread. The focused beam of light will stay the same, but you control the amount of softness it spreads out to. Similar, you can create that similar look with this, and if you use this projection attachment, you can also control the focus of the shadows that you see on her face. You know, you can make them a little bit softer if you don't want these edges so hard or pronounced. That's a very fun little thing that you can do with that. As far as modifiers go, the top three, I'd say, is a projection attachment, the Fresnel, and a beauty dish. If you're trying to achieve the Hollywood glam look. Cool. I'll go back to the Hollywood glam image. Seeing is that we were on that one. Pleasure. I'm glad I could be of assistance. Any other questions? Lighting, camera settings, anything else I can help with before we end this off? Because we have reached the end. Actually, better question. While you guys think of some questions, did you guys enjoy this format? Should I do more of this? Is there any notes that you can add for future versions of this? Because a lot of the previous questions when we do live editing is people were very interested in how I got the shot. Is there anything I missed? Anything that you guys would prefer, me to add or go over, or the way this thing was flowed. All right. Next time, what I'll do is I'll add the raw image so you guys can see the before and after. Obviously, the edited image has some form of manipulation on it, but definitely I'll take that note and we'll do the raw image as a comparison. Perfect. Any other questions to end off? Kat, Rand, Jesh, Kim? If you guys are good, just let me know and we can end this off. Perfect. Kim's good? Rand's good? Jesh would like a live shoot. I was thinking about that just before I started this live. I promise it a lot. Okay. Let me work on it. Live shoot. But awesome. If everybody's happy, nice to have some background info from Kat. Perfect. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining. This was lovely. Thank you for coming out, watching some of this. We will do this more often. And I'll take you guys' notes in consideration. Pleasure, guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful evening further. And that is going to be it for me for tonight, guys. Cheers.